Yo, what's up, my friends? This is Joaquin, and I'm here on the line with,
Jay.
and this is the Overflow Podcast at thisisoutcry.com. We are super duper duper excited to be here this week. Unfortunately, we had some unforeseen gobbledygooky things happening last week, which prevented us from doing the podcast. We were caught unawares, so
Literally
literally unawares. So
and physically.
and physically and figuratively and all the illies for realies that are out there. So with that being said, what's up, Jay? As always, how you doing today, man?
I'm good. You know, you said that about last week, and I had that ghost pain in my back.
Oh, you have a ghost pain. It's like when people lose a limb.
Yeah, like that.
Yeah.
Well, we can touch base on that just a little bit, just enough. Where we came back from New York, right, the week before, or that same week, right, Monday.
Yes.
Yeah, Monday.
We got back
and
Monday.
then all excited to fill our listeners in on what happened in our trip. And Thursday morning, I got rear-ended by some woman with in a car. I got into a bad car accident, and so
somebody not paying attention, probably.
Yeah, most likely the impact was for sure that they weren't paying attention. But I thank God that two things, that Bean wasn't in the car with me, and that I'm okay.
I mean, could have been worse.
Much worse.
This could be the Overflow Podcast of one. I was already making out my list of replacements.
Seriously? and were you not going to tell me? You weren't going to tell me, right? I was going to find it on my own when I got there, when I got a flyer.
Exactly. Yeah, I was. Yeah. You would have been in the hospital, and you would have got a notice on your iTunes that a new podcast was up.
Or seen the graphic on the Outcry Instagram.
What happened?
Well, I guess I got replaced.
Yeah, but then I'd be like, but I still want you to do the graphic stuff. Because it's for the Lord. But anyway, that's cool. So anyway, today is tonight. Super excited. So as if you guys that are listening, you guys know we always record on Thursday. We're actually recording a little earlier today because tonight at my church, Influencers Church Atlanta, we start our influencers conference, and I am super duper excited.
Nice.
We have the first session today. Then tomorrow, I think it starts up at like 9:00 in the morning.
And you won't be to that because you're working.
No, I'll be there because
you took off.
I took Friday off. They're mad at me because they're like, "What the heck, man? All you do is
Dude,
take time off."
Just like you were out on vacation, and then you came back for 3 days. We went to New York. You're back for like a week and a half, and you're out again. That's dope.
I'm out again. Yep. So, so it's like from 9 to 9. Starts at 9. The last speaker's at 7:30, I think.
Well, I'm gonna be honest and say that I'm hating a little because I think I'm just going for tonight, right? I'm just going tonight.
Yes.
And like Ravi Zacharias will be there.
Yes.
Not tonight though.
No, not tonight. Sorry, buddy. Sorry. But
tonight, so good. But tonight we're having Sammy Rodriguez,
and which is cool. I've never heard him preach. I've heard good.
And this is the thing. All right. You probably forgot we've spoken about this, Joaquin. But the reason why I'm excited about going and possibly getting back in touch with Sammy is because Sammy and I grew up together. Well, basically, sort of. We did ministry together. I started in ministry with Sammy and a bunch of others, with Gabby, the pastor that came up from Florida.
Right.
Sammy is the guy that God used to speak over me and let me know what my ministry was going to be. Like that's
okay.
that's why I say like he's like influential. He's had influence
Gotcha.
in my ministry. Like it was a Friday, it was a youth service, and he was young. I think he was like 22 at the time, and I was like 16 or 17.
45.
And like the Lord spoke over me, like using Sammy spoke over me about my ministry, and then we started this thing. Well, they started this thing called Holy Ghost Missions, and Richie Donez was one of the main guys. He was also at my church. He pulled me into that, and that was like my first. It was old school, like tent rally stuff.
Oh, okay.
And that was like my first time really outside, like preaching outside of my own church, my own youth group. So
okay, that's what's up. That's what's up.
Then and I got a funny story too with Sammy, but I'll see if we talk to him tonight. I'll see if he remembers.
Okay, all right. Well, maybe because I know the lady who's doing the security for the event, and she ain't no joke, bro. I mean, she is like dead serious.
So we gonna pray about that.
Yeah,
something supernatural to happen.
You can pray all you want, but she gonna put you on the ground.
The supernatural thing still knock me out. I'm gonna see stars.
And she's I believe she's an investigator for like the state.
Wow.
So, yeah, so she's serious, real deal Holyfield kind of stuff. So anyway, with that being said, so we got that going on tonight. And then you had a couple articles you kind of sent my way this week. Why don't you? The first one was, let's do the Lil Wayne one. That was kind of interesting.
Yeah, I don't know how it is that I got on the Relevant magazine email list, and most times I just delete it.
Right.
I just delete it. Like it come in, I'll delete it. I won't unsubscribe for reasons like this. Like so, I saw it, and I was gonna delete it, but the subject was Lil Wayne almost became a Christian rapper, and of course, I was like, skirt. And it spoke. There was an article. It was real quick. It was real small. It wasn't no detail on anything. But it spoke of a time where Lil Wayne apparently got arrested. Hey,
yes.
He was in jail. It was in New York in Rikers Island.
Yeah, he spent like 8 months, I think it was.
A place I am more familiar with than I care to admit.
Which you just did, but okay.
And apparently he was getting a lot of fan mail, right? If I'm trying to remember this.
Yes.
He was getting a lot of fan mail, and one of those fan letters was from either a church.
Yeah, it was a church. It was a church. And
right.
And they told him that, all the work you could do for the gospel was kind of the message. If you basically that's what the article said. It was weird because it wasn't like if you accept Jesus and
right, like it wasn't preachy.
It was that there was like all the stuff you could do for the gospel or for the church, and so
right. You see, now I'm gonna give a little insight, but Troy, this guy Troy Duhan, the owner of Creation Fest, he knows Lil Wayne like personally, like he sells Lil Wayne his cars. He has a bunch of dealerships all over the South.
Okay.
And he would tell Juice and I on how like he sold Lil Wayne's mom a car, hooked her up with like dealer price, and he would tell me how he would speak to Lil Wayne like on the regular. He said like Lil Wayne grew up in the church, like a lot of these artists do, right?
Correct.
They grew up in the church, and he would tell me like Lil Wayne would like just show up at the dealership just to speak to him, and he would like every time he would take him out to lunch or whatever, but always like getting at him with the gospel and telling him how much Jesus loves him and all that. So like the fact that Lil Wayne got this letter in jail, like it didn't surprise me that he actually contemplated these things because, I mean, God has placed people in his life. Apparently his mom is still a fervent churchgoer and a lover of Christ. And, it didn't surprise me that like this happened. What did surprise me though is like what you mentioned is that the letter wasn't all preachy and condemning.
Well, I mean that we know of because
that we know of because they only got that one
little line, yeah.
but it was enough to make him think.
Yes. Yes.
It was enough to make him think.
And he thought better of it, I guess.
Yeah. But right now, he's not doing any music because he's locked in a legal case, in a legal battle against Birdman.
Yeah.
I guess he didn't put any respect in his contract.
Yeah. That's so dumb.
So stupid.
So anyways, yeah, so Lil Wayne, maybe there might be, I mean, maybe it's just it just sounds like there's just been seeds that have been planted in Lil Wayne's life. I mean, because he's not
right.
I mean, I think he's still under 35, or he might be 35. Like, I don't think he's older than that. Because you gotta remember, Lil Wayne's been doing his like rap stuff since he was like 14 or 15 with No Limit Records and all that stuff. So he's been around for like a long time.
Long time.
I mean, I remember reading like, when he turned 18, he was finally able to curse in his raps. Because you're not allowed to, if you're under the age of 18.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, it was something like that back in, I mean, that might have changed, but that's why. But really, if you think about it, that's why you've never seen any. Remember back in the day, no kiddie rappers or kiddie singers. They never like cursed or anything. Then they turned 18, and all of a sudden you're like, "Wow, this dude's like cursing all the time now. What happened?" It was because they turned 18, and so they were able to curse, which is kind of a weird thing. But, the interesting thing for me, the article just seems that Lil Wayne has had, he's thought about it. It seems like he's actually thought about, maybe surrendering his life to the Lord, but I mean, the trappings of success, the money, the fame, the women. I mean,
right, and a lot of people don't realize that it's a lot harder. It's harder for these people.
The drugs, all that stuff.
It's a lot harder for these people to like leave the life. It's like when Jesus tells the young rich guy, sell everything that you have, take up your cross and follow me. And the dude couldn't do it, and he was sad, but he still turned away and walked away. It's difficult.
Well, I mean, and I think it's hard for all of us, right? For any of us, if you think about what in your life, you're having a hard time letting go, even as a believer, right? Even as somebody that says, I love God.
Right.
There's still always that thing, right? There, not always, but there, for a lot of us, there seems to kind of be this thing, whether it's pride, whether it's some form of idolatry, just something that we just can't let go, and that hinders us, right? So, it's all about, in a way, it's all about scale, right? The perspective, in a way, is the same, right? Something is hindering. But it's what is the scale of what's hindering you, right? And if you're super, rich, then we know it's the the love of money, right? That's what's really. But there's people that aren't super rich, and the love of money pulls them back, right? Because that's what their pursuit is.
Right. Or they're not rich, but they always want to be.
Right, and so their pursuit is the money, so they can be filthy rich, and they trick themselves into like, well, when I become filthy rich, I'll use that money for the Lord.
Yeah, and it never happens. But I'll tell you this, and I think I told you when we first were discussing this article, that if Lil Wayne indeed does come to Christ, like what I would love is that he not do music. Right, because all you're doing, I mean, as far as I'm concerned, when you reach a certain level, and then you come to the Lord, and then you keep doing it, you're trading in one platform for another, right? And that seems to happen a lot. Right. Like a lot of people, they do whatever it is that they do it secularly, and then they come to the kingdom, and then they do the exact same thing, and there's no time of discipleship, no time of growth, no time of getting into the word, and so it's just changing audiences basically.
Right. Well, I mean, to me, the thing that kind of separates that, right, is like if they come, Lil Wayne comes to the Lord, right, and he has a good church and a good pastor that they're going like, look, look, Wayne, we're gonna be discipling you, right? We're having Thursday night Bible studies. We're gonna be praying. We're gonna be in constant, contact. Part of it is right. The spirit is gonna do what the spirit is gonna do, and I think if you have the problem is a lot of times with these guys, like you were saying, that they get saved and all of a sudden they're just thrown out there. All they really do is switch audiences. Is just they're probably not even really getting discipled, period, at all. And the pastor or the ministry that they end up accepting Christ under kind of gets blinded. And so they're like, ooh,
they're blinded by the celebrity.
We got this like big time star who can do stuff for, and I said, and I don't think there's no ill will in it, right? There's no, it doesn't come from a bad place. It comes from a good place, right? We want to, oh man, these kids who follow Wayne, we want them to hear his testimony, and
right. It's all with good intentions.
Good. That's what I was trying to say. Yeah, good intentions, but they forget that it's okay to put him out there to share his testimony, but you need to be feeding into him. You gotta. It's almost like you gotta kind of control it a little bit and feed into him. Now, some people, I don't know if you remember the $1 Million Man. Was it $1 Million
right,
Man?
I do.
The wrestler,
Ted DiBiase.
Ted DiBiase. He became a Christian and he kind of disappeared for like 4 or 5 years, I think is what it was. And the reason was because the minister that he accepted the Lord under, they were like, look, you're not going to do anything, no wrestling, no nothing, no speaking engagements, no nothing for like, it was like 3 to 5 years. I can't remember the exact amount of time. And they just, all they did was it just fed into him. They got him involved in the local church, in his local church, and they fed, so that when he came back with came back with his testimony. He was strong, and he actually came back to the WWE for a little while. He was a heel, which is a bad guy, right, in wrestling. And he did all that stuff, and some people were like, "Oh my gosh, how can he do that?" And it was like, well, because it's a part. It's a part.
Right. It's an acting game.
It's an acting game.
But it's like you say Ted DiBiase. On the flip side, you have Sting, who like came to the Lord and like went right into like the speaking and doing little shows like that, and then he went right back into the whole fame thing. I'm not sure if it was a money issue.
Right.
Maybe he needed money, but I think it was poorly handled.
Yes, and so we got to remember, I think that's the one thing is that whenever we talk about, because this has been going on for years, right? We're always talking about it'd be cool if this celebrity accepted Christ. Well, why would it be cool? Is it because now we have this celebrity to do whatever his celebrity skill is for the quote
right? Like
kingdom?
how the big conversation is, oh man, if Eminem would rap for the Lord, it'd be amazing.
Right, but is it? But is it? Do you want Eminem to know the Lord because you're worried about his soul, or do you want Eminem to know the Lord because you want the shine that's gonna come from even as like people like us, right? We're not industry people. We're like just a couple of schmoes, where it's like, hey, we're listening to Eminem's new Christian rap CD, right? It's
right. It's gonna bring a bigger spotlight to CHH,
or not even that. I'm talking. Don't even think about CHH. I'm talking even as just individuals. How you can kind of brag. Yeah, Eminem's in our camp now.
Yeah. That's true.
As a schmo, as a nobody. I say when Mace got saved, right? And everybody, oh my gosh, Mace. Yeah, Mace is a Christian now. Yeah, we got this, And that ended up being disastrous because once again, at the end of the day, we're not discipling people enough as it is, and that's actually something we should probably talk about. I was at some point. Now speaking of,
I was thinking the same thing.
So speaking of discipleship and doing kind of dumb things, we also saw another story this week about
the tip.
A waitress at it was at a Cracker Barrel, which I love Cracker Barrel. Some good old Southern cookies. Good old Southern food. Man, those biscuits are like off the chain. Now I might go eat a Cracker Barrel now. So anyway.
Off subject. Did you know that Lay's has a Southern biscuits and gravy flavored potato chip?
You know what? Off subject, I do, and it sounds disgusting. I want the real thing.
it's in the vending machine at work, and I'm just like,
I want the real thing. I want the real thing. But so this waitress, anyways, back to the story. The waitress did her waitressing thing, and she helped this couple, older couple. Apparently, they might have been middle aged, maybe a little older. When they were done, they left, and instead of money, they left her like this little letter.
A very condemning and judgmental letter.
You know, it was very judgmental. I would say it was judgmental with a side of condemnation, because
or was it condemnation with a side of judgment?
No, I think it was the other way around, because I remember reading it, and you know, basically they told this young lady, or middle age, I don't know how the lady was. We'll just say she was a young lady. They told this young lady that, you know, while it's nice that you're working, you should be at home, you know, taking care of your
kids and your husband.
And one of the funniest things, which I don't let me go down this rabbit trail, but one of the funniest things I read in that letter was like that they said, this is why a lot of husbands try to find something outside their marriage, because their wives are out working.
No, dude, it was worse. Said, this is why your husband is probably stepping out with someone else outside the marriage, because you're here at work all day.
I was trying to be nice, but because you're here working, and man, this lady was very hurt. And what was interesting, but I'll tell you what, I will give this lady props, because if it had been me, I would have taken a picture of that thing and I would have posted it on social media with the people's names. She actually blocked their names out.
Yeah, she did.
But, you know, and then the article went on and kind of, it was weird, because the article ended up being more anti-Trump than it did really about the fact that this woman was not only did she do a good job, the people were happy with the job she did, but then they just kind of judged her and condemned her, and then didn't even leave her money.
Didn't leave her a tip.
Didn't even leave her a tip.
And apparently she's waitressing because she's putting herself through school.
Through school, yes. And she's not even married. She had a boyfriend.
Right? Yeah, she has a boyfriend. Not even married.
So, you know, so that article, what's funny about that article for me is that tipping as a Christian is an age-old problem. I remember when I remember way many years ago, this guy told me, he goes, yeah, when I used to be a waiter, we would fight on who would not work on Sundays, because that's when the Christians came in.
Christians don't tip.
and well, not even that. It wasn't just that they didn't tip. It was that either they didn't tip well, or either they didn't tip well or they just didn't tip. And then their kids were out of control. They wouldn't even, you know, their kids were acting crazy, and it was just a lot of work and a lot of hassle for basically, you know, you're not making any money, you know, and they would leave them tracks.
The chick tracks.
Well, not the tip, but the chick tracks, right? They would leave them, you know, they would leave them tracks and little, you know, oh, Jesus loves you. You know, you need Jesus, but then it's like, man, I busted my butt working for you, you know, working and making sure you got everything you needed, and your response is a track. I can't feed my family or myself with this track. Which my response was always, well, but you know, Jesus did say man should not live by bread alone.
Then they shouldn't have eaten at the restaurant.
No, I'm just saying that's what I would tell the waiter guy. When he would tell these stories just to mess with him. Well, you know, the Bible didn't say. He was like, that's not the point, Joaquin. I'm like, no, I get you. But, you know, so that leads to kind of a larger thing, and that is this. You know, a lot of people like to. I always joke that I don't bow my head to pray.
Yeah, I knew this was coming
in restaurants, right? Because this is what I always joke about it, because I'm like, I don't want them to know I'm a Christian. That way, they can't blame Jesus for the fact that I'm not going to leave them a tip. It's a terrible thing. I don't do that, by the way. Just to let you, I do leave it. I always leave a 20% tip, regardless of how bad the service was. I always leave a 20% tip.
Isn't it better to leave a bigger tip when the service is bad? as a Christian?
No. You know why? You know why not?
Why not?
Because because the Bible says, right? It rains on the just
and the
unjust. You're gonna get your 20% tip, whether you were good or not. You see, I'm living the Bible, son. But believers, please, if you're gonna be so bold as to rep the Lord with your grateful shirts or your, forgiven shirts, your shalom shirts, or whatever, Christian apparel that you're wearing. If you make a big show out of the fact that you're praying before you eat your meal, do us all a favor and leave a nice tip. One of the best examples that I ever come across, and we'll skippily do after this. One of the best examples that I ever heard about how to do it right was when I was, it was the spring of my junior year. I was doing a summer missions trip. I was doing a spring break trip to missions trip to Fort Wayne, Indiana. And the missionary that was there, that was kind of our liaison, he told us that whenever him and his wife would go out to eat, how waiters and waitresses always ask you, like, how are you doing today? So or some form of that question. And they would always say, he would always say, today is the second best day of my life. Because everyone's always going to ask, right? What was the first? So he would say, the first is when I met Jesus Christ and I made him Lord and Savior of my life. And then he would say, hey, he would hand him a track. He was, I want to give you this little track. If you get a chance while we're here, or maybe sometime during the day, why don't you read it? I challenge you, encourage you to read it. And if you have any questions, if I'm here, ask me. If not, my information is in the back of the track. And that was it. And then when they would finish their meal, if the waiter if they never had the conversations, he said, you'd always leave a nice big fat tip, and he said that he was able to share about Jesus with a lot of waiters and waitresses, because he made the connection, but then he also, in a way, when you leave a nice tip, right, you're thanking them for their service, even if it's bad service, but you're putting that out. You let them know that you love them and that you respect them by giving them a good tip. So, my fellow believers, I just challenge you. Leave a good tip. Unless in your country, tipping is something that's not allowed. I know there are some countries where they don't allow tipping. Then just leave them the track. But leave them a nice one, I guess.
Well, in those countries where you can't tip, you probably can't talk about Jesus either.
No, that's not. Some of them probably. Some of them. But some of them, it's like, like you don't tip because the waiters get paid like a.
Yeah, well, in here too, it's some restaurants. Because that's the rule in McAllister's. In McAllister's, you can't tip the servers because they get paid.
Right, they get paid more than the $2.15 an hour.
Right.
Or whatever that is. So that is our tip of the day. See, it all came back. It all came back. If you're going to tip well, my friends. Is there anything else you want to talk about? Anything else we got to hit? Because right now we are at the halfway point.
At the halfway point.
So why don't you talk about one of the people that we went and saw?
Well,
when we were in New York, as I get this ready.
All right, dope. Well, if you are a loyal listener, then you know that we talked about.
You.
Hey, we thank you.
You know
so
who
much.
You are.
You know that we've talked about this person many times, right? So we went to New York and we sat to have. I'm not even sure what to call it. I want to call it dinner, right? Let's call it dinner.
Yeah. It was like
It was dinner for them and it was dessert for us because like all I had was
like
pie and you had cake.
It was like Lunner. Lunner?
Oh, whatever.
Like half lunch.
But We met up with Heesun Lee and her husband,
Yeah.
and Joaquin finally can say that he's been to all 5 boroughs.
I've been to all 5 boroughs. I have stamped them all.
So you've actually visited the entirety of New York City. Dope.
Yes.
And man, it was cool. Like we sat down with Heesun. She discussed her new album with us, gave us an advance copy. So we've been bumping
Yes.
Beauty from Ashes for like a week.
Yes. Beauty.
A week before.
Beauty for Ashes. It sounded like you said beauty for masses.
Beauty for Ashes.
Beauty for Ashes. Beauty for Ashes.
Beauty for Ashes.
Yeah, so it was dope. We got to meet Heesun. We met her adorable daughters.
One who still doesn't like me.
Didn't like me either. And the
Kayla does not like me at all.
Well,
the other one loved you.
Yeah, the other one liked me, the baby, because I have this, like same cognitive kind of functions as a baby, so we're able to communicate. We got to meet Tim, Heesun's husband.
So you guys got to meet.
Yeah, you had met him before?
Yeah, I met him at Creation Fest.
Oh, okay, so I got to meet Tim. Hey, Tim. And it was fun. I mean, it was a great time. It's always fun when you get to meet artists that you listened to throughout the years, and number one, they turn out to be cool. They don't turn out to be jerks. And just to get a little bit of just kind of who the person is behind the art, right? And so we're really excited because hopefully within the next month or so, I would say, I don't want to put a time frame, so the next month or so we hope to have her call in, or we will have her call in, I should say.
Yeah, we'll have a call in
so that we can talk with her, because we definitely not just her music but her testimony. We want to get that out there for you guys to hear. So we're gonna go right now. We're gonna dive right into Beauty for Ashes. We're gonna dive into her first single. They just released a music video last week.
Is I'm With You, which is features Sam Ock of Good Fruit.
Good Fruit.
And actually she recorded that down here. I was hanging out with them when they were recording that. It was dope.
Okay, dope. And we're big fans of, Amp and Good Fruit and all those guys. So this song is now what's the song? What does this song deal with?
This song exposes the fact. Well, in this song she talks about how she's been struggling with anxiety and panic attacks for almost her whole life, and it's to bring, I guess, attention to the fact that like over 6 million people, if I'm not mistaken, suffer from anxiety and panic attacks. Like right. I didn't know it was such a big deal until I saw this video. So she's expressing how she's been dealing with it and how Jesus is who helps her deal with it, but she still has them, and to let them know that they're not alone, that she has them too, and that she's with them. So it's pretty cool. It's pretty honest, is what I like about it.
All right, that's what's up. So right now we're gonna listen to "I'm With You," Heesun Lee,
featuring Samok
from Beauty. What's the name? Beauty for Ashes.
Beauty for Ashes.
Do you know what it's like when everything is screaming, get me out?
The silence got the best of me. I'm sitting here, life is stressing me. These thoughts wanna mess with me. I'm scared of my destiny. I close my eyes trying to find peace, hoping I can tell myself I can make it. But I can't take it. Wait, I'm okay. Yeah. It's all in my head, I'm okay. No, I'm not okay. These thoughts won't stop. Chest pains, they exceed me. Heartbeat, take it easy. Losing breath, I see me dying. Jesus, don't leave me. Looking around, trying to catch my breath. Scared this moment will cause my death. My vision's blurry. These hands are shaking, thoughts won't rest. Have trouble breathing. Now I'm pacing back and forth for air. Run to the phone, call 911. My hands are shaking, I'm too scared. My throat is closing now. I can't swallow now. Keep breathing, don't stop. Keep breathing, don't stop. Inhale, then exhale, take it slow. You got this locked. Don't let this overcome you. Close your eyes, the panic will stop.
Do you know what it's like to live like this? When Everything is screaming, get me out of this. Do you know what it's like to live like this? Well, if you do, then I'm with you.
Maybe some pills would help me. They say it could numb the mind. If I could live one day without these thoughts, then I'd be fine. Sitting in traffic scares me. Flying on airplanes scared me. The thought of never escaping, it's like you can't prepare me. I feel like I'm barely making it. Living this life with fear, no breaks in it. Put all of my days in it. Put all of my shame in it. I'm tired of living this way, I dread it. They say don't sweat it. It's clear they'll never get it. Imagine living your life in fear, never in peace, never be near the joy of living in freedom. Everything's gone except your tears. Crying for someone to save you. If anxiety could replace you, if there's someone else, I'll trade you. Take my place, I need a breakthrough. My heart is growing tired. All the trauma that I put it through. My life's too short, I shouldn't do what fear inside tells me to. Inhale, then exhale, take it slow. I've got this locked. Don't let this overcome me. Close my eyes, the panic will stop.
Do you know what it's like to live like this? When everything is screaming, get me out of this. Do you know what it's like to live like this? Well, if you do, then I'm with you.
Listen, everyone's got a story to tell. Sometimes you see heaven, sometimes you see hell. This life ain't easy, believe me. Hard times come, at times they need me. Sometimes they leave me, but I made my way through this battle. Saddled up, never throwing the towel. It's okay to be anxious. It's okay that we're not perfect. It's okay that I'm broken. Coming through this life, I know that it's worth it. My Savior's hand is lifting me, uplifting me. He lives in me, His promises He gives to me. Panic attacks are real, but still my heart, they never will. No God's will, I'm standing still. Feel His presence, know it fills every part of me. He's a conqueror. He told me don't quit, there's no blocking ya. When trials come, I'll rock for ya. I finally found this peace, I'm making it. I'm chasing it. It's here with me, I'm embracing it. Every time it leaves, I'm taking it. Proclaim my story to the nations. Patience, all I'm facing. Life's amazing. Keep on racing, don't give up. God is waiting.
Do you know what it's like to live like this? No, you don't. No, you don't. When everything is screaming, get me out of this. Do you know what it's like to live like this? Well, if you do, then I'm with you.
And that was I'm With You featuring Sam Ock.
So dope.
And
The video is dope too.
I've seen snippets of it. I need to sit down and actually just actually watch it.
I'm in shock.
I know. I'm just all over the place lately.
Yeah, it's been like that.
But so Heesun Lee, Beauty for Ashes, you can get it iTunes, it's on Google Play. I think you get it through them on CD Baby.
CD Baby, iTunes, and Google Play are the main three right now.
Yeah, so go grab it, check it out. Heesun Lee, Beauty for Ashes.
And still, my banger is in my veins. That's my jam.
It's I've been listening. I listened to the first half of the album the other day, and the more I listen to it, the more I'm appreciating more and more like the other songs, the ones that she did with the ladies, Underdog.
Yeah.
Oh, that song is like the first time you hear it, it's like, okay, it's dope. But then when you really kind of let it marinate and like listen to it a little more, for me, it was like, it was dope. Like I said, the whole album though it's fantastic. You need to pick it up.
It's a solid album. It's real balanced.
I mean, it even made us cry.
Right.
It even made us cry.
And that's like something that you don't really have much of anymore.
No, Jay's ignoring my comment, but
I didn't hear you say that again.
It even made us cry a little. We were driving. There's a spoken word piece she does, and then the song right after. Well, it just emotionally wrecked me and Jay as we're driving at the middle of the night back to Georgia.
I'm not acknowledging that. I'm not acknowledging that.
I acknowledged it for you, bro. So with that being said, we want to kind of say, man, our trip. For those of you that have been listening, we went to New York a couple weeks back. We were hoping to talk about it last week, so we're doing it this week. Man, our trip to New York was fantastic. I think that we experienced a little bit of a lot of different things. For me, I think the highlight of the trip was the first night.
The interview,
the interview with Bird.
Why?
Because I think it was because we, as we're talking to Bert Boca Chica.
Shout out to Bert
Boca Chica. If you haven't heard that interview, listen to that interview. Fantastic.
Well, explain a little to who Bert is,
so Bert is. If you want to know who Bert is, listen to the last podcast. All right, that's what I'm telling you. Now, Bert was one of the founders of this event called Rap Fest. And they did it for like 22 some odd years. Was it 22 some odd? They did it for 22 years. There's no odd. It should have been 20 odd years, but it's 22 years. In New York, it was like this outdoor festival. So think of it like a Christian hip hop, Lollapalooza kind of thing, right?
Word. That's a good one.
And so, or Warped Tour, right? Because some people might not know what Lollapalooza is. Anyway, so 22 years they did these outdoor hip hop concerts, and I remember as a teenager reading about them, online on the Christian hip hop sites at the time, and I always thought it was so cool, like seeing the pictures, like, oh my gosh, because living in Georgia, living in the metro area, Metro Atlanta, we didn't have a whole lot of Christian hip hop come through. It was very rare, and so to be like, oh my gosh, how cool would it be to go to the Bronx and to like hear like all these artists that I listened to, right? That I love to listen to. So that's who he was. That's what they did. Now the thing with Bert, what really just grabbed my heart was that the fact that me and Jay on the drive up, we had all kinds of discussions and talks, some silly, some serious, but we were talking about the Legacy Nights project that we're working on for next year for here in the Atlanta area. And just the vision of how we want to run Legacy Nights is how Bert ran Rap Fest. And for me, a lot of times, we have ideas, right? We have all kinds of ideas. But the thing is, will our ideas work? Are the ideas that we're talking about, are these things that we've written, are those things that will actually work? Are those things that are even possible?
And the interesting thing about that is that, Legacy Nights won't be the first time that we've done something like this, right? No. So there are things that now that we've learned from experiences that we've learned, like things we know for a fact don't work, not to do, some things that we have to tweak and be better. But yeah, you're absolutely right. Like, it was like scary cool.
Yeah, like like some of the aspects of Legacy Nights were like, yeah, that's. But because I think this is the thing. Before, when we did events, whether it was I did them by myself or you did them by yourself or we did them together, we didn't have. I think we have a grander vision this time than we did in the past. And so with the grander vision comes, am I stepping out of what's possible? And to hear Bert talk about the things that they did that aligned with a lot of the things, if not all the things we talked about on, discipling those that are working with you and that are working alongside you, and how, being a servant, that servant leadership model, and making the connections with artists and understanding that, the people you invite to your platform, don't just represent themselves, they represent you. And to me, I think that was one of those like light bulb,
That was one of those. That was one of those lightning moments.
Mind blown, because he was like, and I think that's something we don't think about in the context of church in general, right? A lot of times churches were just so quick to, oh, this guy says he feels called. This guy says he's called by the Lord to preach or to teach. Yeah, come here, man. I'm gonna put you to teach. I'm gonna put you to preach, and we don't vet that. We just
right,
because God, and we don't think. Wait a minute. What this guy does is gonna reflect on our ministry. It's gonna reflect on our church. It's gonna reflect, on our outreach. It's gonna reflect on whatever it is that we're doing, that we're putting him in there. He's a connection to that thing. So if we put a guy on Legacy Nights, for example, or even if we invite someone to Outcry, the podcast, the Overflow Podcast, and they turn out to be living, they're, I don't know, let's make it the worst example, the worst thing ever, right? Like he's like shooting heroin and he's like running drugs for like the cartels, right?
And justifying it by the Bible.
Right. But then he's coming here, he's talking about how, the Lord is this and the Lord is that. And that's why I sing for God and all this different stuff. But then he's doing all these things that are just are direct opposites,
that are contrary,
right? Contrary to how as believers we should be stepping out and living. When people find that out, they're gonna be like, oh, but wasn't this dude on the Overflow podcast? So these guys co-signed this dude, and it's like, oh, we did, but we didn't know. Well, whose fault is that? It's our fault for not knowing, right? It's our fault for not getting to know the person and understand who the person is and where they're coming from. And that really ties back even into what we talked about Lil Wayne and how people just, we're going to put you in ministry because you love God and you say that's what God's called you to do that. But, and then when something happens and that person falls, right? Well, they don't just blame that person, right? It's on the ministry, it reflects on the ministry. So that aspect really blew my mind, because not only does that apply in a who you allow into your ministry, but that's also us.
Yeah.
How is it that we're living our lives? How is it that we're conducting ourselves? Because we literally represent the ministry. And how do we want people to see the ministry and see us and see what we're doing? So
we have to be a little bit overzealous and jealous about what God has placed in our hands.
Yes.
Right. We have to protect what God has placed in our hands. Can't just give it up or, give authority over it to just anybody.
Correct. And so I think that was one of the biggest, things. So I said, I really, you should go and listen to the podcast to really kind of get a full flavor of all the different things he talked about. But it was, to me, like that was the highlight. The trip ended on two highlights for me, right? The Burt interview and even hanging out in the Bronx for I think we were there for a couple of hours waiting for him to get in. So we, just being able to kind of just hang out and see and think about. For me, I know a lot of times as we were driving through the city, and I even told you this a lot of times, I was like, how it stirred my heart. How my heart was stirred for New York, right? And just in seeing these things and just the possibilities of just the movement of God, in just the areas that we drove through.
To bring us back. Yeah, I'm like that every time I go home. Every time I go home, my heart breaks. For home, because it's home.
Right. Right. It's home for you. It's just the city for me, but I feel a strange connection with it. That's why I'm always hating on it. I love you, New York. And then,
but I hate you.
With a love-hate relationship with you. But and then ending with getting to hang out with Heesun and Tim and just getting to build. Right? Just getting to fellowship. I love to fellowship. Growing up Baptist, one of the best things we did, man, was eating fellowships. And it's always great to be able to spend that time. So that was for me kind of the two bookends. What about you? What was your experience like? What did you walk away with
Well,
are not in our time in the city. Besides the amazing peanut butter jelly donuts.
Oh my God! You see why you got to do that? With me was like with you, like the same thing, but on a different level. Seeing how like I've known Bert for a while, it was just being able to go back home and reconnect with somebody who like I haven't seen in years.
Right.
In years, like the whole time before the actual interview, like how we were talking about Rap Fest and Stephen Baldwin and Salem Coffee House and all these things. It was dope. It was like highlights of like the good times of my youth. But in New York, yeah, in New York. But like it's so funny how what I feel like was something bad, but turned out to be it marked me. It marked me for the rest of my life and my ministry, right? Because while we were in New York on the Friday, the day after, on the Friday, I had to go preach at my old church, the church I grew up in.
Yes.
The church that I'm so loyal to. But if you know, like I grew up in a very legalistic church, but for whatever reason, I always have to go home. Right? I always have to go home, and I always have to touch base with my old pastors and see what's going on. But so we were invited to go minister there. I was invited to preach there, and we went back and forth. Like I told you what I was preaching about, and I like with everything else, I ran everything through you. We built a nice sermon. Everything was cool, right. And then when I got there and I went to preach, like
you short-circuited yourself.
I basically, I pulled a Peter. I basically took my eyes off Jesus, right? Because when and this is the thing, right? Normally when I go preach somewhere, I like to introduce myself. I say a few jokes, and then I like to get right into the word, right? And I just right into the sermon, right into the message, whatever, the teaching. And but growing up legalistic in that legalistic church, I did that and realized like I froze. I froze because I didn't pray before preaching, right? Because that's the way you had to do it in that church. If you had to preach, you had to, number one, be dressed up in a suit, clean shaven, two things that I was not. Neither in a suit nor clean shaven.
Nope.
Right? And then, you're supposed to have the whole church stand to read the word, right? To read the passage that you're going to be preaching from. And then you had to come into this big, deeply spiritual, superfluous prayer before you actually started the sermon. And that's like a good 40 minutes before even going into the sermon. And I choked. Right. I was like, oh my God. And like you were there. I stopped. I'm like, oh my God, I forgot to pray before preaching.
Right. And you just, well, the thing
and it all went downhill from there.
Yeah.
As far as I'm concerned.
Yeah. And what's funny with that whole thing is we even prayed beforehand. I think though, and we'll share this because I told you this, so we're not speaking out of turn here. But I think part of it was you had got so worked up with the fact that you were there that when you went up to preach, you had already worked like emotionally, right, or at least mentally, you had already worked yourself up to where you just didn't know how to get out of it.
Yeah.
And so you it's like whether and it was probably very subconscious, right? But you just like, okay, I'm gonna get started and then once I get in a role, but you were so frazzled, right? You were just already frazzled when you got up there that when you started and then you remembered, oh, I didn't pray. And it was funny because I'm watching you and you were like, oh, I didn't pray. Let's pray. Lord bless the sermon. And then you did that. And I think you kind of realized that you kind of did it flippantly. And then it just even frazzled you more. From there, you just went downhill. But it was just because you didn't even like. It was funny, and we really did talk about. I didn't hit this that night. But I was thinking about it because somebody had asked me how it went, and I remember telling them I was like, I went okay. I said, I think Jay did better than what he thinks he did, but he was frazzled. And like even the way you ended was so like, it was like, because I'm looking at you, I'm like telling you like wrap it up because you were just kind of rambling. You kind of hit a rambling point, so I'm trying to like go like wrap it up, and you look at me and you're kind of like, then you're like, okay, brother so and so, you're gonna come up and yeah, so yeah, if you guys need to pray, then go ahead and pray. And like you didn't like lead any, then you just kind of went like rah. Then you were like, Joaquin, come here and pray for anybody that needs to go up front. And it was just kind of like, I'm like, what? I don't know what's going on. And
all I wanted to do was get out of there and get in the car and go back to Ray's house, throw in a movie, and just get done. Like maybe stop for a couple of slices of pizza, a beef patty, and just be done with it. But that's the funny thing though, right? Because like everybody else like loved it. Everybody, like, you know, the pastor's wife was like, oh, it was awesome. The kids in the church, the youth, like, oh, it was so awesome. It was great. And I'm like, what are you talking about? Yeah. It sucked.
Right. And I think that's the lesson, right? That's the lesson that maybe it's the lesson that you, for whatever reason, had to maybe, I'm not gonna say the lesson you had to learn, but it's something that you had to learn maybe in a way. I guess I am saying that. So it's something that maybe you had to pick up on and you had to learn. Is that, you know, so many times, and I learned this on my Fort Wayne trip, right? So many times when, you know, we think that when everything is rolling 100%, right, everything is going great and the music sounds great, and you know people are responding, and you're just like, man, I just preached like the bombest message that I've done like all, you know, year. And you know, and it's like, and then if you really step back, what you realize is a lot of that has to do with what you did. You know, I preached the dopest message, right?
Right.
You know, my worship team was on point. But it's those times when we realize that we're like Peter and we're screw-ups and we screwed up and everything is gone. Everything that could possibly go wrong has gone wrong. And like me, you're standing in a prison, and you tell a bunch of guys there that they should be in there because they all did something to get themselves locked up. And when you say that and you realize I have nowhere to run if they don't like what I just told them,
and they have nothing to lose,
and they got nothing to lose, or at least you hope they got something to lose, or you're like, please let them like be almost close to parole. They don't want to kill this college kid. But then those are the moments, right, where for me 17 guys came and accepted the Lord. For you, where, you know, kids told you, yo, the message was great, even when because it's not because at the end of the day, right, the lesson is what? It's not about us. You know, it's about the message. It's about the Lord. It's about, you know, letting him be known. And that's why we're, you know, broken vessels, right? It's about him. So that, Jay, I think for me, that's your takeaway, is that, you know, don't get frazzled. And even when you think you do terrible, if you're doing it because you're honoring God, God's going to get his honor and glory in that. Even if we think it was garbage.
Yeah, agreed. You know? Agreed. But what I learned from that, which is like what I relearned.
Correct.
Is you know, to not focus on the me. Right. When I got back to Georgia, like I shut away in prayer and asked God to please help me take away every last remnant of hurt
from that place.
From that place, right? And to remember, like what you just said, you know, our job is to be messengers, right? To be messengers of Christ, not messengers of Jay. Right. So I got so caught up in myself, and like, and that for a while there, I felt afterwards like it was more about me,
right,
and not about
right.
Jesus,
right?
Because it was almost like I had to prove that I was good enough.
Right.
Right. Like when God already told me and showed me countless times that I'm good enough. Right. And I say that because, like, you know, I've been in ministry for over 20 years. Right? Over 20 years. And it's, you know, 20 years later, or over 20 years later, this is something that I'm still being reminded of.
Correct.
Right. So that's out there. That's a key out there for everybody, or anybody who's listening, who thinks that they're not good enough, or that they failed, or that they're stumbling. Dude, it's man, God is so good.
and you know, I'm gonna be a little jerky about this right now, but it's like, if you don't think you're good enough, you're right. You're not. Right?
But that's the thing, though. I didn't think that I wasn't good enough for God. It was for the church.
Right, but you're doing it.
Like I had to prove myself to the church.
Right? So that's the thing. You're not good enough, right? None of us are good, right? None of us are good enough. But, however, right? There's the quality, right? However, right? God deems us good enough, and He is with us when we have to step into that role. And that's, you know, listen, and I'm going to teach everyone out there that's listening. If you ever have to, you know, do a message or do a teaching at a church and you get nervous and you get like Jay was, where you're just frazzled, you're Fraggle rocked out of your mind. Here's what you do, because I learned this. You stop. You tell the audience, especially if you're doing like some kind of ministry thing, you tell them, listen guys, right now I'm kind of frazzled. I don't know what's going on. Right? You don't have to tell them, right? What's going on? Let's pray. And then you pray. You pray, you get, because here's the cool thing, right? So not only are you praying to God, but you're getting all these people to pray to God on your behalf. Right? And that tends to calm things down, and it allows you allows you to kind of reset, you know, calm those nerves. Boom, and then you bring the word. That's Joaquin's preaching tip.
And then of course, you know, the other highlight for me was spending that Saturday, that time with my brothers.
Yes.
Which was like hilarious.
It was a lot of fun. You know, which is funny because well, of your brothers, the only one I really met for the first time was, I actually met him for the second time, but it was the first time I got to kind of hang out, right? Was Joey.
Right.
You know, because I had already known, I had already harassed Joe enough. And last time Joe was down, he had Johnny with him, and I harassed both of them. And so they know who I am. And so it was great. You're right. It was fun. And even for me, it was fun sitting back and just watching you guys, like how you guys, you know, interact as brothers. You know, and I'm just watching, and I'm just like, yeah.
And then the funny thing is on the side,
it was important.
It was important for me that you were there, Canito, because like my brother Joey, well, none of them are believers,
right?
But like the most adamant, like non-Jesus, is my brother Joey. But because of his love for me as my older brother, and the fact that he knows that I love him, like he listens to the podcast and he listens to the devotionals, right. Like, because you remember, like he was like, well, why are you guys out here? Well, you know, a few interviews, and like he knew, he was like, oh, that's for the Overflow podcast.
Yeah, and
I'm cool. Like, yo, that's so dope. That's so dope, right? Like he, I mean, no matter how he feels, or his opinions on Christianity or Jesus is,
right,
like whatever, that doesn't matter because I'm his brother.
Right. And
so he listens and he supports and he's all about it. And like that impacted me. So I mean, like right now,
that was very cool.
right now, I'm getting a little misty because, you know, I love my brothers, and it's just it's cool to know that they're in our corner and that they support what we're doing.
Yeah, and that is cool. I don't know, they're supporting me so much as they're supporting you.
Well, they're supporting you because you're in this with me.
But no, it was cool. It was good. It was cool. Like I said, I like hanging out with Joe, and he's the one I've had the most interaction. I mean, I took him to the gun range and we went shooting and we had a blast.
Yeah. That's right.
Pun intended. So yeah, it was very cool just to get to hang out with them and get to eat and just laugh and joke and throw little jabs at each other. And And I loved it because I don't I'm the oldest, but I'll have sisters, so I never really had that like brother like where you're kind of just being mean to each other as brothers or mean to each other in that kind of fun, hilarious way. So it's fun for me to kind of be able to slide into that and be treated as one of you guys,
Yeah, because we are merciless.
right. But I'm smart because I take my pot shots as they come. I don't try to overdo it.
Yeah, because you saw what happened to the other kids.
Right. They just talk too much. Sometimes you got to sit back. A brother said that's the thing. They just kept talking. So they were just easy targets. And I don't know if you noticed, I'd just sit back there and I would take my shots at your brothers, but it was always like real, like boom, boom.
Of course I noticed.
Like real,
of course I noticed.
Like real surgical, right? Boom, boom. And then I'd step back. And they would take the hits and they would laugh, but then it was like, where'd he go? I was like a ninja.
And then it's like somebody else will say something, and then it's bad because it's all of us. Right. It's not like one on one. It's like all of us. Right. Bad.
All of you guys are loud. And then the last thing for the trip, I think for both of us,
peanut butter jelly donuts.
Peanut butter. No, it was getting a chance for me to meet Ray.
Right.
Talk to Ray and get to hang out with him and his family. And for you, I know in a way, it was more in a physical way, right? To reconnect with Ray, be able to be like around him, because I know you talk to him. You talk to him through like on the phone or whatever. But right, there's always that difference when you're able to break bread together.
Yeah, of course.
And you know what? And being able to go to church with him and seeing him, be part of the worship team and preaching
and seeing like the pastor who also, I mean, like I have so much history back home. Like it was again, this trip was a lot more nostalgic for me. Like
yes, but I think it was awesome. It was a great trip because so we made we were able to make those connections, or for me to make those connections, right? For you to in a way remake.
Yeah, to reconnect.
To remake or reconnect with those connections. And, being able to be for you, we did a couple of videos on the Outcry Instagram. One of them didn't work out because I'm a dum-dum, but two of them did.
Yeah, you have to change that one with no sound.
I don't know how to do it. Well, no, we have to redo the video. That's the problem. We'll figure something out later. But the point is that, being able to kind of hit some of those points in, Edgemere and Rockaway,
dude, and to see
where you can see where you came from, not
like we met by chance. We met with one of my old deans from high school.
Yes,
who was like, "Oh, I'm so happy to see that you're alive and not in jail."
yeah. So it was cool to be able to. For me, it was cool. It was cool for me because I know you appreciated it when you were able to tell your story in those vignettes that we did about where you were, about where God brought you from, and for me it was cool for me to be able to like do the little videos for you in that way, right? Because I don't have that connection. It doesn't mean anything to me, but it was cool to see you reconnect in a way with your past, in a way that was very redemptive.
Yeah, I was able to
through redemptive lenses. Let's say it that way.
Right.
Redemptive
yeah,
lenses.
like when we went to Bayswater, I was able to reconcile a lot of my past there. Right. I just stand there and just thank God for Jesus, as Paul said. So yeah, that was dope.
So super excited about that. And out of that, we're going to be starting a series soon. We got to kind of, once the website is fully up and running,
by tomorrow,
we're gonna be starting a little series called My Story, where we're just gonna ask, we're gonna ask people that we know, that they're not even gonna be necessarily quote unquote known people, right? But it's gonna be we're gonna start this new series. Super excited about, where we'll be asking people to share their story, share their redemption story, in about a paragraph, or share a redemptive story of what God has done in their lives or what God did in their lives. So we're really excited about this. It's, like I said, it'll be the website will be running soon. Jay said tomorrow, so probably within the next couple of weeks we'll get that going. And so I'm super excited about that. So with that being said, hey man, we're at time. We're a little over time, but that's okay because that's who we are.
A little bit, yeah.
So with that being said, hey, this is outcry.com. Go check it out because you can actually, at a minimum, you can actually connect with the podcast and with the devotionals that Jay has been doing. And if you go visit, you're going to see the transformation. Be on the lookout if you're in the Atlanta area. At some point, now this is Outcry, and then at some point we're going to be starting, and we're going to be pushing Legacy for next year. So be on the lookout for Legacy as we start, moving in that direction in the next couple of months. If you want to bring us, if you're listening to us and you're in the United States or outside and you want to bring us to come hang out with you guys, this is outcry.com. We'll come and do it. This is Outcry event at your place. We'll come do the podcast at your place and have you as our guest.
Yeah, definitely.
All you got to do is feed us, or at least me.
Pizza. Pizza.
Feed us your local cuisine. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, even better. Yeah.
Even better, right? So with that being said, gonna go get ready to go hear some preaching. So my name is Joaquin.
I'm still Jay.
And this is the Overflow Podcast at thisisoutcry.com.
Love you guys.
Peace.